Okay, so to start with, on one hand, you don't get the fan pumping out in the background because it's not hot enough to warrant the use of a fan. However, because it's not hot enough, you get a mirror snoring instead. It's always one or the other, isn't it? Now, I was hoping to stick to a schedule of doing a weekly premiere on Monday mornings, my time, which is Sunday evenings in Canada. That's not happening this week. Aside from, as I've mentioned in my previous video, I'm just a little bit tired, so I'm not really getting ahead of myself at all. I plan on spending the next 3 days working hard trying to get ahead with my videos because come Thursday, apparently, according to the forecast, it's going to be 40 degrees here, which means I'm going to have both air conditioners running all day and several fans and probably evaporative coolers as well, meaning that I won't be able to record any audio on Thursday once the temperature starts climbing. So hopefully I will be able to prepare something ahead of time that I can either run as a premiere or just drop as a video without getting behind schedule and without you guys missing out on any of my videos. Now, if you've followed my channel for any length of time, you know that I hate misinformation and unverified information. So I get people emailing me things, but I only ever run with things that I can verify myself. Now, I've noticed that a few content creators have put videos out talking about the new witness that has been mentioned by Chrissy Travers. And this concerns me because I have concerns about her credibility. I'm just going to say this outright. So I'm going to go through the audio where she's talking about this new witness, but I do want to discuss it along the way because there's a few red flags in what is being said here. And then there's a few things that I want to go through at the end that are an example of the misinformation that we are being given by this individual. And there's also a bit of a bombshell at the end too, which certainly calls her credibility into question. Why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I am sick of the misinformation that's being put out. I'm sick of the games that are being played. And I just want to see justice for Lily and Jack. I just want to see Lily and Jack found and laid to rest properly. And when I see people coming out with misinformation that is basically muddying the waters and potentially jeopardising the case, then I'm going to speak out. So I won't go down that road again though, but you know my feelings. I am not a fan of misinformation. I'm not a fan of people muddying the waters. So let's start off by listening to this audio about this new witness.
But my question is that, so there was a witness that has come forward that actually states being on Lansdowne Road, and they actually were stopped by a vehicle, two vehicles. One was identified as Alvin McKenzie, and the other person, one of the occupants of the second vehicle, was named as Jenna Jowdry. So when this witness went to the police with the information, they didn't really do anything about it. But I'm just wondering, given the fact that they pulled him over in order to check this evidence that they found at 10:45 in the morning on May 2nd, and yet that item was not reported as found until after 3:21 by a girl named Emily Ogley. So why didn't they report these items found at 10:45 in the morning and head in the other direction rather than go to the house and report it? Why did nobody ever hear about it till late in the afternoon?
I know. Like I said, this is the first time I've heard about any of this.
Now, maybe this is all meant to be some kind of act, and she's intentionally acting this way. But if that's the case, it's still unethical. So let me tell you what's going on here. She starts out with, my question is, and it's drawn out, it is intended to gain attention from the audience. Not only that, but it is signalling the audience that what is about to follow, it's basically going to stir up a hornet's nest, and she wants to make sure that the audience reacts accordingly. It's the innocent doe act. My question is this. I'm not really making a direct accusation. I'm just asking a question because I'm just so innocent and I just don't understand it. This is manipulation. She wants to make sure that the audience understands that what is about to follow is going to be scurrilous. Now she goes on to say, there was a witness that has come forward that actually states being on Lansdowne Station Road, and then she goes, Lansdowne Road. Straight away, this is a red flag for me. 2 reasons. First of all, she changes tense throughout the statement. She starts with, there was a witness that has come forward, that states being on Lansdowne Station Road. She's gone from past tense to active present tense for starters. This witness, there was a witness, is in past tense, has come forward. That's your active present tense. They have come forward. This is what is happening, or has happened in the moment just now. So was should have been followed by came forward, not has come forward. I know this may sound pernickety, but this is someone who is supposedly educated enough to be able to do a 60-hour course and become a private investigator. So you would expect that the grammar in their sentences is going to agree. Even with the actually states being doesn't agree with the beginning of the sentence. There was a witness that came forward. But on top of that, there's missing pronouns here. You have this witness that came forward. She says, there was a witness that has come forward. That actually states. That should be who actually stated, or and they actually stated. So again, she's got the tense all muddled up there, but she's gone with that instead of any sort of pronoun for this witness. And then she says that this person actually states being on Lansdowne Station Road. There's no pronoun in there at all. There's no, this person states that they were, or he was, or she was. Just this person states being on Lansdowne Station Road. When someone starts leaving pronouns out of a statement, when someone is changing tense in the middle of a sentence, that is a huge red flag. That to me says that this is either an exaggeration of something or it is outright made up. Especially when you hear them say actually states. So they have to preface that this person stated something by saying actually. So they're throwing in a persuasive word. It's like Janie with believe me. Durwood with this is 1000% ironclad. When you hear actually thrown in like this, They're saying, you have to believe me. This is truthful. This actually happened. Now, this doesn't always mean that someone is lying. It just means that they are trying to emphasise their point. This person actually stated this. But given the other red flags, just in this one part of the statement, it just gives me pause, and it makes me want to find out what the real story is here. Is she over-exaggerating for effect to get more of a reaction? Is she twisting a story here? Or is this something that has just been fabricated outright? She keeps having to correct herself throughout as well. So first you get her saying they were on Lansdowne Station Road, and then has to correct it to Lansdowne Road. And then she says they were stopped by a vehicle and changes it to 2 vehicles. And then, because why worry about ethics, confidentiality, or anything like that if you're a private investigator, she throws out 2 names in full. And she says one was identified as Alvin Mackenzie. The other person, one of the occupants of the second vehicle, was named as Jenna Jowdry. There's information missing here. There's gaps in her narrative. Because she doesn't actually establish here that how many people were there. It starts out as 2 vehicles. And then she just comes out with 2 names. But one of these names is one of the occupants of the other vehicle. So she's not clarifying who the other people were in that vehicle, or even how many people were in it. But why come out and publicly name these people, knowing that you are on a live stream that is going to be watched by several thousand people, knowing that people are now going to be digging into who these people are? She has just doxed 2 people, one of whom I've never even heard of, and dragged them into this case, whether they like it or not. There is a reason for dropping these names. I don't know what her motivation was, but there was no need to name these people up. And she has come out intentionally and given their full names. Given that this is not information that has been released by the RCMP in any way whatsoever, why does she think that she should drop these names or even drop this information in the first place? Because she goes on to say, so when this witness went to the police with the information, they didn't really do anything about it. So first of all, what she's doing here is she is cueing her audience to ask questions. When they went to the police with the information, this is her cueing the turkey guy to say, well, what information is this that they went to the police about? So she's leading her audience along, making sure that they are following her narrative, making sure that they are going to step in all the right footholds that she is laying out for them. This is a classic storytelling technique of basically drawing your audience in, hinting that there's more to come and you need to pay attention, but you're going to have to work for it. And then she says they didn't really do anything about it. Note she threw in really, meaning probably didn't do anything about it. I don't really know. They probably did something. They may have even done something that she knows about. When you say someone didn't really do anything, that means that they did do something. If you say they didn't do anything about it, yes, that's definitive. They didn't do anything. But when you say they didn't really do anything, The implication there is actually they did do something, but in my opinion, it wasn't enough. So she wants her audience to believe that the RCMP didn't do anything, but she's not going to come outright with it and say that they didn't do anything. She's got to throw in the really, because the truth is they did do something. What they did, we don't know. It's not something they've disclosed because clearly it's not something the public needs to know. And of course it's not something that she has any intention of disclosing because it doesn't suit her narrative. So she's trying to convince people that the RCMP didn't do anything about this witness coming forward. And then she doubles down with her effort to make sure that her audience is going to be scandalised. But I'm just wondering, again, it is the cue for, when I finish saying this, I expect you to act horrified or disgusted or maybe a little bit confused, just like me. But confused in a, well, why didn't they do this kind of way. She's basically priming him to get the reaction that she wants. And she goes on with, given the fact that they pulled him over in order to check this evidence, so she's already used actually to do the persuasive thing. This, actually was the case. Now she's gone, given the fact, this is factual, this is real, you have to pay attention, you have to believe me. Now I don't know if this is just her way of retelling stories to make sure that she gets a good enough reaction out of people for her stories, or if it is something that she's just basically made up herself, or is over-exaggerating. But it is a huge red flag when you start getting these extra words in that are for persuasive purposes. Actually, the fact. But what she says next after saying the fact is totally illogical. She said, given the fact that they pulled him over in order to check this evidence that they found at 10:45 on May the 2nd, I mean, think about what she's saying here. A child is missing, and apparently these people, however many they are, because we don't know how many are in that second vehicle, but apparently they've been given advanced knowledge of the fact that Lily and Jack are missing, and they've come from out of area to search, and they've found these items, and instead of sending a message to the family members who notified them that Lily and Jack were missing, they've pulled over some random stranger on the road and said, hey, check this evidence. This is all happening before that non-intrusive alert went out. This is happening before they've even set up a command centre. This is happening 18 minutes after the RCMP have arrived on site at 1407 Gairloch Road. And we're talking about items that are essentially rags. A scrap of blanket that's hanging over a tree branch. And then some torn old t-shirts or whatever it is lying on the ground. But I mean, even if you just happen to stumble across a backpack with this item belongs to Lily Sullivan scrawled across the front of it in humongous writing, why are you going to pull over some random stranger on the road and say, hey, look what I found? What's the purpose? Who does that? And for anyone who may have missed the connection, Alvin is one of Janie's brothers. And this is all occurring a short distance from Ron Mackenzie's property and only a kilometre from 1407 Gairloch Road. So it makes no sense that these people are just going to pull over a random stranger and say, hey, can you check this evidence? And given that at that point in time, they were considered missing children, why refer to it as evidence in the first place? Is this just her inserting the word evidence? Or is she claiming that that's what they said? What she's telling us here just makes no sense. It is illogical. What she's claiming makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So that to me says that she is either over-exaggerating or this is completely fabricated. Or that someone has gone to her with a BS story and she's bought it hook, line and sinker. And then of course she adds the cue line. This is your cue to act scandalous. And yet, that item was not reported as found until after 3/21. And then she names Hayden's girlfriend in full also. So she's basically just dumped 3 people in it, very publicly named 3 people as having some sort of connection to this case. She's mentioned an encounter or an occurrence that, if it actually did occur, is something that the RCMP has chosen not to release to the public. And what does she do? She comes out and just blabs it out on a live stream. And then she goes on with, so why didn't they report these items found at 10:45? Notice the double why. That's not someone who's stalling in their sentence, who's stuttering a bit because their brain's stopping them from telling a lie. That is someone emphasising. That is someone making sure that you are paying attention. I am making sure that I am doubling down on what I said before. She's referring back to the cues that she already gave. My question is, and I'm just wondering, she's throwing in the double why here because she's basically saying, this is your cue to pay attention to what I say next, because this is what you have to react to. But then she gives away her intentions because she says, why didn't they report this? And pauses and goes, these items. Meaning that her intention here is to stir things up by suggesting that someone amongst these people is responsible for planting that piece of blanket. She's not questioning why didn't anyone report finding this bit of blanket in the morning. She's talking about why didn't anyone report this bit of drama happening, these people pulling this person over and getting them to have a look at the evidence. And the thing is, the only reason I could imagine for these people pulling someone over to say, hey, can you have a look at this evidence that we've just discovered, would be because they recognise the vehicle and they know that that person works for the RCMP. Well, that's not the case, because this person had no idea who they were. But the whole thing that she says here doesn't make sense either. Why didn't they report these items found at 10:45 in the morning and head in the other direction rather than go to the house and report it? So what she's actually trying to imply here is that they pulled this person over and said, hey, check out this evidence that we found, and then they just cleared out and they didn't report it. Now, had she done her research, she would know that Alvin is actually Janie's brother. So how can she be certain, for starters, that they didn't report it? How does she know that he didn't just jump in his vehicle and ring Janie and say, hey, can you just pass on this information that we've just found this item hanging in a tree and maybe it could be something significant? But she's giving this definitive thing. She wants people to believe that these people, whoever they were just, in the vicinity of where this piece of blanket was found, and they pulled someone over to show them the evidence and then they just drove away. But see, the thing is, What she's actually saying here is, why didn't they report it and drive away as opposed to going to the house to report it? When you break it down, what she's just basically said is, why did they go to the house and report it when in actual fact they should have just reported it and then driven away in the opposite direction? Either this woman has really poor communication skills, really poor literacy skills, which calls into question the sort of testing that is done to allow someone to become a private investigator, or she has an agenda here and she is trying to sell a narrative that isn't entirely accurate. I suspect that what is happening here is that she is actually embellishing the truth for a particular purpose. Whether that is to try and force information out of RCMP, or for some other reason, or like I said, someone's just really taken her for a ride and she's just bought it hook, line and sinker. But this is not factual. Whatever may have occurred is not what she is telling us. I actually suspect that someone has told her a tall tale and she's fallen for it. And I'll explain why towards the end of this video.
Well, there's a lot of stuff that's been distorted between all this project obstruction that has been going on between these camps. And it is quite frustrating trying to run an investigation when you have 20,000 other investigators competing for that spot. So,
wow, we have some major insecurities here, and sounds like a bit of a jealousy issue. It's frustrating trying to run an investigation when you have 20,000 other investigators competing for that spot. Okay, so first of all, obviously saying 20,000 is an over-exaggeration. But essentially what she's saying is that people are beating her to the punch. She mentions competition. She sees all these other people who are looking at the case as competition. This explains her comment on Facebook, and I mentioned this the other day, where she claims that all the information that YouTubers have comes from her, essentially. She didn't quite say it in those terms, but that's what she was trying to infer. She wanted people to believe that all the breaking information that YouTubers have was stuff that had been leaked to them from her. Which, like I said, I've never had any leaks from this woman. I do my own research, and I know I'm not the only one. And if you go back over people's content for the last month or so, you'll see that so many people have asked the question, who is this Chrissy Travers? So I don't know who these YouTubers are that she's supposedly feeding information to, because the only people who knew who she was were the people who followed Facebook and basically saw her with all the drama with PBMH. I suspect what she's trying to do here is infer that because she leaked that statement that Malaya wrote, that's her giving inside information to YouTubers. Except that that was leaked on Facebook for anybody to see. But she's saying here she's frustrated because she's trying to run an investigation and there's 20,000 other investigators competing for that spot. For what spot do you mean, my dear? Because all we're trying to do is figure out what happened to Lily and Jack and achieve justice. I find it interesting that a private investigator would consider content creators and people who comment on Facebook as being her competition. That to me says that this is someone who has a desperate need for attention. And I think that is why she has come out and dropped all this information. Not out of the interests of the case, but because she wants attention. She wants to prove to the world that, hey, I am an investigator. I have found out all this information. But what she has achieved is she has potentially jeopardised the case. But not only that, here's the ironic part. Now, Belinda is going through all the legal avenues to get temporary custody of Lily and Jack so that she can get information from the RCMP and from CPS, so that she's not left out of the loop in terms of what's going on with this case. Unfortunately, you have this private investigator who's come forward and just blabbed a whole heap of information that may have been supposed to have been kept confidential. And this private investigator is supposedly acting on behalf of Belinda Gray. So what she has achieved is that the RCMP are going to be very reluctant to give any information to Belinda Gray because she has a PI working for her, allegedly, who is a loose cannon. I'm really unsure whose idea it was to employ a private investigator for an ongoing case that is being worked really hard by the RCMP. I'm just wondering what the goal is, because so far what I'm seeing is her working against the RCMP.
Oh,
Right.
you know,
So run that by me again. Somebody got pulled. Mackenzie. Which Mackenzie got pulled over?
no, it wasn't a Mackenzie that got pulled over. It was our witness.
Okay.
Was driving down the road heading to a fishing spot, I believe, and happened to notice these people on the side of the road. Slowed down. They flagged them down. The girl said, "We found a shirt." He's seen her run out of the bushes towards the vehicle. And then she said, "Oh, we found a shirt down here," and told them that they were family from Truro and they were out looking for the missing kids.
So now she's gone from her witness being stopped by a vehicle, by two vehicles, to now that they saw these people on the side of the road and they slowed down and these people flagged them down. And then she refers to the girl. Now I'm guessing this is meant to be Jenna, who she mentioned, but she claimed that Jenna was one of the occupants of the other vehicle. So she was in two places at once, apparently. Now, it concerns me the way she says, the girl said, "We found a shirt," as if she's reading a story. She does then backtrack and say that he saw her run out of the bushes towards the vehicle, and she said, "We found a shirt down here," and told them they were family from Truro. First of all, that orange ribbon is the exact location of the pink blanket, or the piece of pink blanket that was found. If you look at the documents, it does actually say that it was found roughly 3 feet off the ground, which, going by that, would say, yeah, that's probably about the right height. But regardless of that, and I know from the GPS coordinates that this is the exact location, how do you find it down here? There's no down here in terms of this location. You actually have to go up the hill to actually get to where the blanket was. So this comment, "we found this down here," and she's referring to a shirt. But again, why are you going to run out of the bushes and flag down a vehicle over a scrap of material found in a tree? And this is a perfect stranger that she allegedly flagged down. I'm trying to apply logic to this situation, but I've got nothing. And then she says they told them that they were family from Truro and they were out looking for the missing kids. Now, first of all, I did a bit of research, and from my research, it doesn't appear that either Alvin or Jenna live in Truro. However, we do know that Malaya's family live in Truro, or some of her family do. So it sounds like the story has now switched to an attempt to claim that this was members of Malaya's family, despite having named up people who are connected with Daniel's side of the family. Okay, let's apply a bit of logic here. First of all, we have a statement from Ron, who is, of course, Janie's brother. He's the one that lives close to Janie. Now, he spoke about talking to Janie at 8:48 on May 2nd, and then he said he called her again at 10:19, which is when she told him Jack and Lily were missing. Now, you would presume that if she hasn't actually gone out and phoned her brother herself, that she probably didn't call her other brother, who doesn't even live locally. And yet apparently he somehow managed to find out the children were missing, and he managed to get there fast enough so that he could actually be there searching on the side of Lansdowne Road at 10:45 a.m. Now, if we go down the avenue of, well, it was family from Truro, let's have a look at what we know about Malaya's family. So Cindy had a missed call from Malaya at 10:40 a.m. That's 5 minutes before these people allegedly ran out of the bushes saying they found this item. Now, she's saying here that she learned from her mother that the kids were missing. So at some time, Patty contacted Cindy and said, hey, the children are missing, and that Malaya's been trying to call you. Now, here's the thing. Even if Patty rang Cindy while she was actually on the way to Gairloch Road, there's a few things to consider here first. So we know that Patty contacted Cindy sometime after 10:40 a.m. because that's when Cindy missed the call from Malaya. And she's saying that when she got back to the house that she learned from her mother that the children were missing. So Patty contacted her sometime after 10:40. Maybe, like I said, maybe Patty was already there or on the road, but that doesn't make sense because we know there's no cell reception at 1407 unless you stand in a particular location on the driveway. But let's be realistic. In a situation like this, it's all hands on deck. So it's not like Patty's going to do the big long drive out to Gairloch Road and then contact Cindy and say, just so you know. She would have, the moment she got off the phone from Malaya, started trying to contact Cindy. And of course, given that the information we have here is that Malaya tried to contact Cindy at around 10:40, then you would think that maybe that was around the time that she tried to contact Patty. But I'll just put a pin in that for half a moment. Now we have Hayley, who was at work, and she saw on Facebook that the children were missing. So she went to Lansdowne at around 2 or 2:30 p.m. and then went out searching with Hayden and Emily. The accounts from Hayden and Emily is that basically Hayden got a text saying the children were missing, Emily saying that she woke up to a phone call. Bit of confusion there, maybe they both were contacted, but they went with Patty to go to Gairloch Road. Now, you try and organise 3 people to get out the door in a hurry. Even if Malaya rang them at 10 a.m, which is when she allegedly realised the children were missing, or, began ringing the RCMP and all that stuff, they still would not have been there by 10:45. They certainly would not have been at the house, gotten Patty out, got her comfortable, had a conversation with Malaya over what was going on, and then went back out and searched. So this story just seems so far-fetched, especially when he's saying he saw her run out of the bushes. Why would she need to be in the bushes? Because by all accounts, that piece of blanket was on the side of this old logging road. It wasn't in the bushes. Nobody needs to have been in the bushes. So this whole account just does not hold water. Time-wise, it makes no sense. This is before the alert went out. This is only 18 minutes after the RCMP arrived at the property. We know that Janie didn't actually make a point of contacting Ron herself. He rang her at 10:19 and allegedly she said, hey, the kids are missing. That is the brother who lives less than a kilometre away. So why would she have not contacted him but contacted Alvin, who does not even live close? It seems that someone is fabricating a story here. The question is who, and the question is why. And of course the other thing I just forgot to mention there is them coming out and saying they were looking for the missing children. Now, given the time that this allegedly happened, like I said, it was not publicly known that these children were missing. If this is allegedly family from Truro, then they're not going to expect some random stranger to know that Lily and Jack are missing. So they're not going to refer to them as the missing children. They're going to say, there are 2 children missing. We're out looking for them. Have you seen them? They're going to start by asking, have you seen 2 little children anywhere on the road? They're not going to just come out with this statement, we're looking for the missing children, and expect this random stranger to know that there's actually 2 children missing. There's no logic behind this whatsoever. And like I said, why would they not first ask them, have you seen 2 children anywhere on the road?
Well, the witness had never heard of any missing kids or anything like that at that point. So was curious, went and looked at the shirt that was placed ever so nicely over the top of a little pine tree. And then those guys ended up departing ways. But when they left in the complete opposite direction of the house on Gairloch.
It seems that whoever made up this story probably read the documents, but didn't pay a lot of attention to the details. So we have an account from Hayden about where the blanket was. So he said the tree was a small bushy tree, not over the top of a little pine tree. 2 things completely different. It was hanging 3 to 3 or 3.5 feet off the ground and hung up like a bath towel. So here she's claiming that the shirt, which wasn't a shirt, was placed ever so nicely over the top of a little pine tree. Now, I will agree, Hayden is not a brilliant witness. He does get things a little bit confused. The details aren't quite 100% all the time. But yes, compared to the pine trees around it, I would describe it as a small bushy tree. But it certainly was not a little pine tree, and given that it was 3.5 feet off the ground, well, it certainly was not nicely placed over the top of it. Now, like I said, Hayden made mistakes in his account. So yes, witnesses can be slightly unreliable sometimes in terms of their accounts that they are given. But how could you mistake this bushy alder tree, if that's what it is, for a small pine tree? And how could you mistake this bit of material as basically hanging over a branch? How could you see that and interpret it as being over the top of a little pine tree? That is not a witness getting small details confused. That is a alleged witness giving a completely different story. Now then you get this statement, they ended up departing ways. Now to me that sounds more like someone has written this as part of a narrative. It sounds like a written narrative as opposed to regular speech. It sounds like it is something that has been prepared beforehand. Up there with the she said with a storytelling kind of voice. It's the same thing. It rings of someone who is basically reading a story that they've created. Who says, and then they ended up departing ways? No, it would be more along the lines of, and then they left, but they went the other way to what was expected, or something like that. But no, it has to be all flourishy, like a story. And you'll notice that she has to emphasise that they went in the complete opposite direction of the house on Gairloch Road. So she's added in an unnecessary word here, which is always a red flag. It makes you question what is going on. Are they being deceptive in some way? She's trying to be overly persuasive with this entire narrative. Adding in complete opposite. She's really pushing it home. She wants the audience to believe her, which makes me question the believability of this story. It makes me question, is it her making this story up? Or has some fake witness come and taken advantage of her naivety and given her a fake story, and she's just repeating what they've said, not recognising all the red flags in the account? See, for me, this kind of story, if someone had emailed me with this account that she is giving here, I would have politely thanked them for contacting me. I would have maybe suggested, well, perhaps you should contact the RCMP and just let them know. And then I would have filed it away in my folder of stories that I've been told that don't quite ring true. I certainly wouldn't be going public with it. Because for me, as someone looking in on this, what I am seeing appears to be a case of either somebody going out of their way to try and discredit the RCMP, or somebody who is trying to give a false narrative for some purpose or another. It would depend on who made up the narrative as to why they are giving this false narrative, whether it is intended to throw shade on Malaya's family or Daniel's family, or whether it is someone simply trying to gain attention. But none of this seems credible to me.
And then later on, I'm checking the court documents, finding out that Emily Oakley reported finding these items, and her timestamp on her photo for those items was at 3:21 p.m. But those items were discovered at 10:45 a.m. We have a witness statement.
Gotcha.
So I don't understand that.
I don't either. That's interesting. I mean, at 10:45 a.m., that's super early.
Right?
That's like the police didn't even arrive there. They just arrived at Gairloch Road for like 12 minutes already at that point. I think they got there at 10:27.
Precisely.
So his maths isn't so great, because I calculate it as 18 minutes, but he made the same point as me. It seems impossible that there would be people on Lansdowne Road searching, especially people who apparently are family from Truro, only 18 minutes after the RCMP arrived. Now, the way she goes on about, well, this Emily claims to have found it at 3:21, but we have a witness who's given a statement that they found it at 10:45. It sounds like a bit of one-upmanship. It sounds like, if this witness is true, that they're basically wanting to just get their own name on the bit of paper, on the documents, to say, guess what, we're the person that found the pink blanket, or we witnessed people finding the pink blanket. You know, it just has that air of desperation about it. We found it first. But not only that, think of the actions that she is describing here. She's describing someone who comes running out of the bushes, and they are so desperate that they pull over some random stranger to say, look what we found. This is connected with the children that are missing. And then, despite this sense of desperation, this sense of urgency from this person running out of the bushes and flagging down a random stranger, they then hop in the cars and drive away in the opposite direction. That just makes no sense whatsoever. What is being described here is a situation where these people's behaviour is in no way consistent. You're so desperate to draw attention to these items that, because of these missing children, that you flag down a random stranger and then you just leave in the opposite direction and allegedly not report it to the RCMP. And we know that there's nothing on the dispatch about anyone claiming at 10:45 a.m. to have come across any items being slung over a tree. I mean, these people are allegedly so desperate to help search for the children that they're already there searching at 10:45 a.m. before any announcements have been made, before most people have arrived. But then when they find something, yeah, you know, let's go, bye. I call BS on that. I kind of think that the lawyer who is employing this private investigator may want to actually employ a statement analyst as well before putting out public information about witnesses whose stories do not hold water.
And so, you know, now if it was, I guess, a McKenzie, I mean, where did that name come from? I know you mentioned it.
Because unlike the police, I actually made sure that my team supplied this witness with a complete photo lineup of anybody and everybody we could compile that could possibly be related to the case. And after numerous selections, they did finally pick out Alvin McKenzie as one of the drivers of a silver Civic 4-door, and Jenna Jowdry was hanging out the back of a dark-colored sedan.
Okay.
They were confidently identified by a very valid source.
Okay, this makes my brain hurt. So he asks her, well, you know, how do you know it's these people? And she's like, well, unlike the police. So let's just throw some more shade on the RCMP, why not? And I know I've already said this, but if this woman is working for Darlene and therefore working for Belinda, then what she's doing here by attacking the RCMP is guaranteeing that the RCMP are not going to give her, Darlene or Belinda information. First and foremost, the RCMP need to protect the integrity of their case, which means even if this woman is working for the grandmother of the children who are missing, they are not going to be able to risk sharing any information with any of those three individuals now, in case it, like I said, compromises the integrity of their case. So after a very blatant attack on the RCMP, she then says, I actually made sure that my team supplied this witness with a complete photo lineup of anybody and everybody we could compile that could possibly be related to this case. Now, how do you figure that Alvin McKenzie can be related to this case when he doesn't even live at Lansdowne Station? Now, I don't know who this Jenna is, but given that she has not come up in any information connected to Daniel, Malaya or Janie, I also don't think that she's overly connected to this case. But not only that, The reason that the RCMP wouldn't have done something like that is because this is a witness who is not talking about one of the three people who are potentially suspects in this case. Can you imagine if every time someone contacted the RCMP and went, well, I saw this person doing this, the RCMP went, well, hang on a minute, we're just going to go and get an assortment of photographs of people who may live in the area, may not live in the area, but who may be connected by 3 degrees of separation to a particular case that we're looking at, and we're going to show you all these photos so you can identify this person, even though your story really doesn't ring true. That never happens. There is nothing to be served here. She's acting like these people that she's talking about have committed some serious crime and that they need to be arrested and locked away. If someone approaches the RCMP and they're claiming to be a witness to something connected with a case, then they're going to be asked for a description of the person they saw. That's as far as it goes. A record would be made of that interview, and then down the track, if all of a sudden someone comes to light as a suspect and suddenly this account from this witness connects with this suspect, then they might get that person in for further questioning, and they might actually do a lineup for them to see if they can identify the person. But what she's talking about here is ridiculous. And I'm really curious to know what the parameters are in terms of who could possibly be related to this case. Because when you start looking at people who have like 2-3 degrees separation from 1407 Gerlock Road, you're going down rabbit holes unnecessarily. There are 3 people that should be the focus of this, not random individuals who don't even live in the area. And what she said next, honestly, is just so cringeworthy. After numerous selections, they did finally pick out these 2 people. So what she's saying is that this alleged witness that she has was given a massive photo lineup, and they're like, well, I think it's this person. No, wrong, pick again. Okay, well, if it's not them, I think it must be them. No, that's not them either. Pick again. Well, is it this one? No, still wrong. Pick again. Can you give me a clue? Who's the person I meant to pick from this lineup? Like, oh my gosh. What she's saying here basically would get this witness completely thrown out of court. It makes it sound like prior to giving the witness this photo lineup, she'd already decided which people needed to be selected from this lineup. And just sat there going, no, that's not right, that's not right. No, that's still not right. Keep going. No, still not right. Come on, you've got 4 people left. You've got to get the right person, surely. Like, oh my gosh. What she has achieved here is guaranteed that this particular witness, should this case ever reach a point where it goes to court, this witness is now completely inadmissible. Their statement is completely inadmissible. This is tampering with a witness. And this is something that is clearly defined in Nova Scotia law. She could get up to 10 years in jail. Now, in this instance, I don't think it would be considered severe enough because this witness isn't crucial to a case. But let's say that she does this with another witness who is crucial to achieving a conviction. then yes, she could be facing up to 10 years. She could still face jail time, and she could face fines for doing this. And I have to say, I find it surprising that someone who has allegedly done a private investigator course and been given that little bit of paper that says that they can be a private investigator wouldn't know this. Now, she goes on to refer to Alvin and Jenna again in terms of the vehicles. So she talks about Alvin as one of the drivers of this Honda Civic. How many drivers were there? Were they all sitting on each other's laps? One person doing the pedals, one person doing the steering, and maybe someone else doing the gears. There should have only been one driver of this vehicle. And then she talks about this Jenna hanging out the back of this dark coloured sedan. Now, when I hear someone talking about someone hanging out the back of a vehicle, to me that gives the impression of someone being inside the vehicle, window down, leaning out the window, basically hanging out the back. But you'll note here, she's not saying these are the vehicles that they got into. She's saying this person was identified as the driver of this vehicle, this person was identified as hanging out the back of this vehicle. So it seems like there's two stories here. One story where the witness is pulled over by these people in vehicles, or stopped by these vehicles. And then the alternate version of the story is these people come running out of the woods. And then you have these people leaving, but again, when you're talking about the description of them, the description is placing them in the vehicle at the time of the whole encounter. The person who was hanging out the back of the window, that's this Jenna woman. Not the person that they encountered who ran out of the woods. And then the other people who allegedly were there in that vehicle that Jenna was travelling in the back of have just been completely dismissed and forgotten about. None of this is ringing true for me. Especially when she has to say that after saying that they've made multiple selections before finally choosing the right people, she then claims that this Alvin and Jenna were confidently identified by a very valid source. Oh my gosh, that sounds like Durwood speak. Red flags all over that. You don't need to add in all these persuasive words here. They were confidently identified. That's, believe me, they did identify these people. This is 1,000% ironclad. And they weren't confidently identified if what she is telling us is correct. Because apparently it took numerous selections before they finally chose the right people. If you've had to make numerous selections before finally choosing the right people, how could you be confident that you have chosen the right people? You wouldn't. And this very valid source, that straight out sounds like something Durwood would come up with. Why would you need to offer up this validation for a random witness unless either the witness is someone sketchy as, and you are trying to cover up for that, or unless it is just a completely made up story? You are not going to refer to a witness as a very valid source unless you are trying to sell a story. If you believe that this witness is legitimate, and if the story that you've given makes sense, is logical, etc., then you are not going to come out and say, this is a very valid source. And when I heard her say this, I found myself thinking, this sounds like someone who is either trying to sell a story that is completely made up, or trying to sell a story that they have basically twisted around a little bit to suit a specific need. Either way, she's trying to sell some really soggy bread here. And I'm not buying it.
And has this source spoken to law enforcement?
Yes.
Okay.
Everything that I'm stating to you has been forwarded to law enforcement at the time that all these claims were made, but nothing's been followed up and everything's just been kind of lost in the mail.
You will have noticed the long pause from the turkey guy before asking her, and has this source spoken to law enforcement? This poor guy didn't know how to respond to this. Seems like even he was like, what? Now it sounds almost like she's answering his question, but she's being evasive here. He asks her, has this source spoken to law enforcement? And she says, yes, everything that I'm stating to you has been forwarded to law enforcement at the time that all these claims were made. So the yes actually applies to the statement that followed it, saying that everything that she's just said, that she stated, was forwarded to law enforcement at the time that this person made the claims to her people. So she has not actually answered if this person originally went and spoke to law enforcement themselves. All she's saying is that, well, when they came to us and gave us this story, then we forwarded it on to law enforcement. Now, what's interesting is that she sold this story so hard. She threw in as many persuasive devices as she could, and she even finished it with that this is a very, very valid, or a very valid source. I added in an extra very, but that's what we were supposed to believe. But then she referred to what was said as these claims. Now, when you refer to something as these claims, that there is this understanding there that you're saying they're claims. They're not verified, they're not truthful, they're just claims that someone is making. Take them with a grain of salt. And yet her whole narrative before that has been pushing the idea that this really, really did happen, and she has this very, very credible witness who even identified these people after multiple tries. So she's not actually provided any information with regards to whether or not this witness has contacted law enforcement. But not only that, she's now downgraded them from being a very valid source to someone who's making these claims. Now, I just want to point out that she only left Please Bring Me Home a few weeks before the search. So I think it would have been mid-October, maybe early November that she left Please Bring Me Home. So this team that she's referring to, all this has supposedly only occurred within probably the last month, 6 weeks, tops. Why do I say this? Because she then comes through with nothing's been followed up. Everything has just been lost in the mail. Now, first of all, RCMP don't owe her anything. So if she has gone to them with this exact information, first of all, the detectives or the investigators are going to look at it and say, well, this witness is useless to us now anyway, because they have been contaminated. At the very least, they appear to have been coached into identifying the individuals that the interviewer wanted them to identify. But at that point in time, you don't know if they've been coached in terms of their story as well. As soon as someone starts coaching a witness, even if it is just to identify the right person in a photo, that witness becomes useless. That doesn't mean that the information is going to be disregarded by the RCMP. They're not going to say, well, this person's given information, but the witness has been completely tampered with. The witness is not going to be someone we can use in court. Let's just throw the information out. No, they would include that in their investigation, and they would look for other ways of verifying that information, meaning they have no need for that witness. And they certainly have no need for the person who has contaminated the witness. So, no, they're not going to go back to Chrissy and say, well, you know, this information that you gave us, this is what we've done about it, these are who we've interviewed, this is the information that we've got from it. They're not going to go and discuss it with her any further. Even if there wasn't this witness tampering that had occurred, that doesn't mean that they are going to have any obligation to get back to her over the information that she's given them. It's not like being at school and handing in an assignment and getting it back with comments and marks on how well you did. This is an investigation where the RCMP are keeping everything close to the chest. It's not part of their role to contact someone who's given them a tip, because that's essentially what this is, and explain to them the validity of their tip. And say, hey, it was a good one, or oh, no, we didn't do anything with that. So she's making the presumption that because she's not heard back from them, that they've not followed up on it at all. She's like, everything's just been kind of lost in the mail. Well, you don't know that. For all you know, maybe it did open up a new investigative avenue. But like I said, they're not likely to go and interview your witness now because that witness is contaminated. The witness has been coached. At the very least, they have been coached to identify the people that you wanted them to identify.
Gotcha. And where was, and how far away was this from Gerlach Road that
Well,
this
you know
interaction
where
occurred?
sorry, not to cut you off. Sorry, hon.
It's okay.
You know where the t-shirt was found along with the blanket?
I don't. I'm not. I know where one blanket was found, just the
Like
one
a
that
piece
was in
of the
question.
blanket, sorry. On the tree?
Yeah, the one on the tree. I'm
Lansdowne
familiar
Road?
with. Yeah, I'm familiar with that one was found.
So that's right where it was.
Okay,
I can send you the logistics to all of that as well.
that'd be great. Yeah, I'd like to look at that.
Okay, and here's another concern. This woman is supposed to be a private investigator, but she can't get her facts straight. She says, you know, the t-shirt that was found along with the blanket. So her focus here is a t-shirt that was found. Now, there were 2 old rags or possible t-shirts on the ground underneath where this piece of blanket was hanging in a tree. 2. Now, when you look at the accounts given by Hayden, Emily and Hayley, I'm just going to say that Hayley gives the most accurate account in terms of witnesses, but I'll just go through what each of them have said. So Hayden said there was also clothes on the ground, but they looked old and ripped up. Emily said there were 2 t-shirts and a blanket. The clothes were on the ground. Now, earlier in her statement, she said something about thinking they were children's t-shirts. When it comes to Hayley, she said they found a piece of a pink blanket in a tree with 2 bigger size t-shirts or shirts on the ground just below. And then down the bottom it said, she said she did not think any of them touched the blanket. She also believes the shirts were rags and didn't have anything to do with the blanket. So aside from the fact that I don't think he's actually read all the documents, the confusion for this Turkey guy came from her talking about the t-shirt that was found along with the blanket. None of that is quite factual. there were 2 old t-shirts found on the ground that were potentially just rags, and the piece of blanket. But it seems that she can't even get her information correct, which for a private investigator is extremely concerning. But not only that, why is she putting the emphasis on the t-shirt? It's almost like she is trying to create gossip, trying to encourage people to start talking about the t-shirt that was found with the blanket. And then she offers to send him the logistics to all that as well. Put a pin in that. I'm going to come back to it.
Because I know that the blanket was found just shortly before 4 o'clock by, I believe it was family members of Malaya's.
Correct. Emily Oakley and I believe Haley.
Mm-hmm.
Emily Oakley was the girlfriend to Hayden. She was staying with Patty and had actually come to the search with Patty from Truro.
Actually, Hayden drove Patty there. Emily clearly travelled with them, but it was actually Hayden, Haley, and Emily who found the piece of blanket. And as it turns out, even though she's not mentioned in the documents, Cheryl was with them also. But this PI, who's really good at her job, doesn't know who the people were who discovered the blanket. You can see why I am questioning the information that she is putting out, particularly in relation to this witness that she's come up with, because it seems that she herself struggles to know the facts of the case.
And it's getting tough. Like I would love to be able to ask Alvin, why he was on that road, or even talk to Jenna and find out, why she didn't report it. But Daniel's camp has been against me since day one, so I get nowhere with that. I'd love it if you could ask.
Yeah, no, I already, I am. Trust me. So,
Bingo. She's just told us exactly what's going on here. The whole point of ringing this turkey guy up, getting on his show, is to use him as a way of getting information from Daniel's family. This is why she has named up Alvin and Jenna specifically. She claims to be this all-knowing, all-seeing detective, to the point where this credible witness that came forward, she was able to provide them with all these photos of people somehow possibly connected to the case. And yet she couldn't even manage to organise a conversation with Alvin or Jenna. The whole point of coming on this show has been to create this story, create this narrative, and convince this turkey guy to be her go-between. She buttered him up, saying, I can send you inside information about this blanket. Because that's exactly what she was saying when she said, I can send you the logistics to all that. That was her outright saying, I can send you inside information. And then she gives a sob story about how hard it is. And Daniel's side has hated her from day one. And then she flirts with the guy. I'd love it if you could ask. And chucks a little giggle in at the end just to nail it in. And he's bought it hook, line and sinker. She's flattered him by, he's the person that she's calling. So he's important because he's the one that she wants to speak to. She's then offered him a little nugget. Oh, I'm going to give you some inside information. And now I'm going to ask you to help me. I want you to be my go-between with Daniel and his family, because I know that you communicate with them, because that's what you talk about in nearly every video. She has basically set him up. this story about a witness, I would put money on this being a made-up story. The reason it has so many red flags is because it is basically a story that has been created, in my opinion, to manipulate this guy into being her go-between, so she can use him to get information from Daniel's family. Now, there's a little bit more audio that I want to play, and yes, this is something that I've played and discussed in a previous video, but I think this just will emphasise that what this woman is doing is basically saying things to manipulate people.
I have one last question, if you don't mind.
Oh, go ahead. We don't have anybody else on. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So I have it under good knowledge that there was some evidence found in the beginning near the waterfalls, and it was found by a volunteer search person who notified the RCMP, and then the RCMP went and collected it. And I have a picture of the RCMP officer along with the vehicle that they were driving.
Okay.
And I'm just wondering why the police have now reported that it's lost. And my other one is follow-up is that Belinda Gray had actually indicated to us that there was a sweater wrapped in a towel that was also located on the search date that PBMH went out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so we actually sent someone to go collect it and bring it to Major Crimes, who met them immediately and did pick it up. We've also never heard any word on that. I'm just wondering where all this missing evidence is going.
So again, she's making accusations here against the RCMP that are unfounded. She's talking about evidence that was collected at the falls, which she's claiming they came out and said that they lost the evidence. Given how tight this case is, do you really think that the RCMP is going to come out and tell anybody if they lost any evidence? No, they are not. But then she follows up with the story about the sweater that was wrapped in a towel, even though it was wrapped in a blanket. So again, she can't get her facts straight. And she's basically suggesting that they've lost that also, because they haven't heard anything more about that. Well, given that at the time she did this interview, it had only been 2 or 3 weeks since they got those items, and it takes several months for things to come back from forensics, what does she expect from them? Like I said, she's proven herself to not be someone overly reliable, so I doubt that RCMP are going to be contacting her and following up on anything that she gives them, because they don't want her coming out on another podcast or another YouTube show and sharing confidential information that's not meant to be out there in the public. So she's basically making these allegations of the RCMP losing potential evidence simply based on the fact that they haven't actually told her anything more about what happened with those items. Ironically, after her claims at the very beginning, where she was talking about people distorting the truth and stuff like that, that is exactly what she's doing here. And it calls into question everything else that she has said. Now, it seems that she came through with her promise of insider information for this Turkey guy, because in his very next video, he was sharing photos and information that she sent him, and then sharing the location of the boot prints, which he had got from a source that he wouldn't disclose. Like, duh, of course he got it from her. The funny thing is, she's got the location wrong. He claims that she's given him GPS coordinates. Well, I don't know if she's basically looked at a map that Nick put up on the screen when he was doing the debrief after the search, or if she's looked at a map that I've put up where I've shown the location that I got from the coordinates but not the coordinates, and come up with her own coordinates based on that. Because the coordinates she's given him are not accurate, and you'll see what I mean.
And here is where the cluster of boot prints were found. I actually spelled that wrong. Put location instead of location. I have the M there. Well, anyways, this is the location of where they were found, the exact GPS location. So they were just off the side of this ATV trail. Now,
so my map on the right-hand side, what you will see is there are two spots that are marked. One is the original coordinates that were given to Please Bring Me Home by the RCMP. So that's the one on the left that's got boot print up above it. The one on the right, which has PBMH marker, is coordinates that were listed on their map underneath the original boot print coordinates. I am not sure why it is that there are two lots of coordinates, why Please Bring Me Home put different coordinates there. I guess it's possible that there was still the leftover stuff from when they did the cast of the boot print, and that they have therefore taken the GPS coordinates of that cast of the boot print. But we know that it was a cluster of boot prints, so maybe both locations are correct. Maybe the boot prints go for that distance. But you will note it's really easy to spot because you have like this arrow that points directly to the location. And ironically, the location where the boot prints were found, he was spot on about that location when he was saying this is where he thinks they were. Now, I don't know if maybe someone gave him some inside information, like Daniel, who claims that he never went there, actually gave him some inside information, or if he just guessed it because it does look like a good spot because you've got that arrow pointing straight to it. But you can see that the GPS locations that she's given him are inaccurate. They're much further along than the actual location. And these are the coordinates that I have got directly from the search map that Please Bring Me Home was using. It is on the internet. For some reason it didn't occur to them to make it private, but I'm just not comfortable with just going carte blanche and just giving you the web page for that, because I'm not entirely certain that it was meant to be publicly available. Now, I'm giving you the coordinates here because basically I've just corrected the turkey guy. Seems like this PI is giving out misinformation, and, well, in terms of the boot prints, what difference is it going to make now that area has been thoroughly searched? So, as you can see, I've put two lots of coordinates here just to explain. So, looking at the bottom coordinates first, this is that size 6 t-shirt that was found in the fire pit. And you'll note that prior to the coordinates, they have the date 2025 11:15 10:20 a.m. So that is when this shirt was logged. And then it's got the coordinates where it was found. In terms of the boot print, you don't have the time and date or anything added there. Nick actually mentioned in one of his live streams that he had been given the coordinates for the boot print and the blanket, and other things directly from RCMP. And what he's done is those top coordinates, the ones where I had labelled on my map boot print, are the ones directly under where it says boot print. They are the coordinates that came directly from RCMP. The coordinates down the bottom, now I've blanked out the name of the map, but the coordinates down the bottom are coordinates that were added by Please Bring Me Home for some reason. There is just a slight variation in terms of the coordinates, but they are pretty much side by side. So it seems like this PI has given this turkey guy the wrong coordinates for the boot print, which certainly calls into question her work. It certainly calls into question the validity of this witness that she's talking about. Now, she gave the turkey guy the image that you can see on the right-hand side. It is a photo of a ankle sock, which is what we would call them in Australia, meaning it's a little sock that only goes as far as the ankle. And so that whole bit on the right-hand side, the right column, is what she gave the turkey guy. And she said, and I'll read it because it's a bit blurry, "This is a child's sock found down by the Garlock Brooks Falls, which is just across the road from the church. The trail on the way is where other items were found, which is between the two graveyards." And you can see the picture above it shows you that's the screenshot from the turkey show. On the left-hand side, the two columns are directly from Facebook. And there's a discussion of the different items that were found. So 2 different socks in 2 different locations, a girl's headband and underwear. Now, come on, let's be real. The underwear's probably got something to do with a teenage girl who was not prepared for the hike and decided to just ditch the underwear without going any further into that. I just find it interesting that she has shared this one little white sock because, understandably, when the grey, black, red sock was shared on Facebook, people were questioning it because they said it looked very, very big. And it does. It is hard to tell. There's nothing that shows in that photo the size of it to give perspective. But you can see that she's gone with the one photo that is the most convincing in terms of that it could possibly be evidence relating to the case. The irony of this is, of course, that regardless of what size those socks are, aside from the fact that she has chosen one photo out of several, the one that clearly in her mind is most likely to be considered to possibly belong to Lily or Jack. In other words, she's trying to once again manipulate this guy and manipulate his audience by only showing the item that is most likely to be believable. But the thing is, all we have to do is look through all the photos that exist of Lily and Jack online. And heck, she's got connections with Malaya. She could have just asked Malaya. And what you will find is that actually every single photo where you can see Lily and or Jack wearing socks, yes, maybe they do wear ankle socks, but every single pair of socks that they wear are cutesy little kiddie socks, as in they have a Minecraft design on them, or they have some little design on them. These children may not have been overly well cared for, but in terms of their clothing, whoever was buying their clothing was going for cute in terms of their clothing. Little designs on there, like, you know, trucks on Jack's pyjamas, or their little rain boots with the dinosaurs and with the unicorns and stuff like that. But the point here is that she's only provided this turkey guy with one image because that's the most convincing image. Now I'm going to finish with one more observation. And this observation relates directly to Durwood. So Durwood has recently started making claims of having connections with a private investigator. Now, if we go down to, I think, the 5th line, he says there's a private investigator that has been working on it for a while. So this is still pushing his story about the children being in the reserve. So this is one instance where he's referring to a private investigator that's been working on investigating the children being in the reserve for a while. And then these are some comments on the right-hand side that appeared in one of my videos as response to people who said things. And one comment was, private people and investigators are making headway, only going cold for the RCMP. So that's one comment from Dingbat. And then another one is, the private investigator has a recorded statement from a witness that was supposed to be confirmed reliable that the children were smuggled across the NB border into Maine by a known child traffic. He is in the country. That's part of the information I gave to RCMP. He's basically making some serious allegations here against the chief at the reserve, saying that she's connected to traffic kind of situations. But he's making these references to this private investigator who's giving him all this information. Now, I thought this was just more of Durwood spinning tales. He likes to throw things in to try and convince people that he's being truthful when he actually isn't. In one instance, in one of his things, he's saying, well, the proof is that there's this statement that this person made that will come out in court. And he's something along those lines and saying that that's his proof of what he's saying, which of course is nothing that anyone can verify then and there. So I thought that he was just making up a private investigator based on the fact that this Darlene has a private investigator working for her and working on behalf of Belinda. However, now he has privated his friends list that I can see on Facebook now. But prior to that, thankfully, somebody managed to get a screenshot of Durwood's friends list. Now, when you look at someone's friends list on Facebook, the people that they interact with the most are the ones that are going to show at the top of their friends list. Naturally, you would expect that Jordan would probably be the first person at the top of his friends list. Also Kent, because we know that they are thick as thieves these days. But what I found surprising was that number 6 on his friends list is Chrissy Travers. Dingbat and Chrissy are communicating with each other in the background. Does that make you feel confident that the information she is giving is legitimate? Because how do we know that this witness that she's talking about isn't someone connected to Dingbat or Dingbat himself? Now, at the end of the day, this information about a witness at 10:45 in the morning, this is nothing but hearsay information. We have not heard directly from this individual who claims to have witnessed this. Instead, we've heard a second-hand account that has a number of red flags in it and is being shared by a person who is proven to be essentially manipulating information to achieve a goal. Not only that, but this person is someone who is talking with Dingbat O'Grady. I'm sorry, but someone who associates with him really doesn't have a lot of credibility in my eyes. The whole witness account sounds like a story that Dingbat would come up with. But then you also have the fact that she's basically come into this guy's YouTube live stream, given this super long story, and then given the sob story of, I'd like to be able to speak to these two people that I've just identified, who are part of Daniel's camp, but they don't trust me, and maybe you could speak to them for me. I very much believe that what is going on here is that this story was intended to manipulate the turkey guy, to get her an in, to get her someone who could act as a go-between between her and Daniel's family, Daniel's side of it. Now this of course is all allegedly, in my opinion only, but I'm certainly not going to add this information that comes from this alleged witness, who turns out apparently didn't contact RCMP themselves, but that the information was passed on by this investigators team. I'm not going to put any of that in my list of information about the case that sounds credible. Now, I've seen that one or two content creators have discussed this. I haven't had a chance to look and see what they've spoken about, but it does concern me that this has become a topic of conversation and that there are YouTube creators who may well take it as factual without really stopping to have a look at what has actually been said. So with this video having been much longer than originally planned, I'm going to finish it there. So on that note, thanks for listening. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. And please hit the like button, get this video out there into the algorithm, and leave a comment below. Let me know your thoughts on the information that's been shared by this private investigator. Do you find it believable? So on that note, thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.